unconscious. Right now, every belief you hold, every emotional reaction you have, and every habitual response you repeat is the result of programming that happened through repetition. From childhood, your brain learned patterns by observing, experiencing pain or pleasure, and repeating what felt familiar. The challenge is that most people never question this programming. They run the same mental software every day and wonder why their results never change. Repetition is what turns a thought into a belief. The brain is designed to strengthen whatever it experiences most often. When you repeatedly think this is hard, I'm not good enough, or it never works for me, your nervous system accepts those thoughts as truth. Over time, they become automatic. You no longer choose them, they choose you. That's why willpower alone never lasts. You cannot outthink a deeply conditioned belief. You must recondition it. This is where conscious repetition comes in. When you intentionally feed your mind new thoughts, new language, and new emotional states again and again, you literally reshape neural pathways. The brain adapts to what you consistently focus on. What you rehearse mentally becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes comfortable. Once something feels comfortable, the brain stops resisting it. This is how a new identity begins to form. But repetition without emotion is weak. When repetition is paired with strong emotion, it becomes unstoppable. Emotion is the glue that locks learning into the nervous system. That's why traumatic experiences can shape a person for decades, and why empowering experiences can transform someone in a moment. When you repeat empowering beliefs with intensity, certainty, and feeling, your brain starts to treat them as real experiences. Think about it. Professional athletes rehearse victory thousands of times in their minds before it happens in real life. Their brains fire as if they are already winning. The same mechanism works for anyone who decides to use it. When you repeatedly visualize who you are becoming, speak it with conviction, and feel it in your body, your brain begins to expect that outcome. Expectation changes perception. Perception changes decisions. Decisions change actions. And actions repeated over time create destiny. This is why repetition is not boring. Repetition is mastery. Whatever you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the lens through which you experience life. When you deliberately choose those messages, you take back control of your future. Emotion is the language of the nervous system. You can think a positive thought all day long, but if it carries no feeling, it has no power to change your behavior. The brain does not respond to words alone. It responds to emotional experience. This is why people can intellectually know what to do and still not do it. Knowledge does not create change. Emotion creates change. Every decision you have ever made was driven by the desire to gain pleasure or avoid pain. Even logic is influenced by how something makes you feel. When emotion is strong, the brain pays attention. It marks the moment as important. That is why emotionally charged memories are vivid and long-lasting, while neutral moments fade quickly. Your mind is constantly asking one question: what matters most? Emotion is the answer. If you want to reprogram your mind, you must learn to generate emotion on demand. This means not waiting for life to excite you, but choosing the emotional state that serves you. When you feel empowered, confident, grateful, or certain, your body chemistry changes, your breathing changes, your posture changes, and the actions that once felt difficult suddenly feel natural. The problem for most people is that their emotional patterns are conditioned by the past. A past failure creates hesitation. A past rejection creates fear. Over time, these emotional reactions become automatic. The body reacts before the mind has a chance to intervene. This is not a character flaw. It is conditioning. And conditioning can be changed. To change it, you must associate intense positive emotion with the outcomes you want, and intense pain with the behaviors that keep you stuck. When you feel deep gratitude for a future you are committed to, your nervous system begins to align with it. When you feel disgust at staying the same, your brain looks for a new path. Emotion becomes the lever that moves your life. This is why visualization works only when it is emotional. Well, seeing an image is not enough. You must feel it as if it is happening now. Feel the confidence. Feel the relief. Feel the pride. The brain does not distinguish between a vividly imagined emotional experience and a real one. It wires them the same way. When you consistently practice emotional conditioning, you stop relying on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Emotional patterns, once installed, drive behavior automatically. At that point, success is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you express because your emotions are aligned with who you are becoming. Clarity of outcome is what gives the mind a direction, and without direction, the brain defaults to distraction and survival. When you are unclear about what you want, your mind fills the gap with worry, doubt, and noise. It scans for problems instead of possibilities. The moment you become crystal clear about your outcome, your brain shifts into a different mode. It begins to look for ways to make that outcome real. Your mind is a goal-seeking mechanism. It is constantly filtering millions of pieces of information every second, deleting most of them, and focusing only on what seems relevant to your expectations. When you define a clear outcome, you give your brain a filter. Suddenly, opportunities, ideas, and connections that were always there begin to stand out. Nothing magical appeared. Your perception changed. Most people say they know what they want, but what they really have is a vague wish. Vague goals produce vague results. The brain cannot execute ambiguity. It needs specifics. When you define what you want in clear, compelling detail, you activate focus. Focus determines what you feel, and what you feel determines how you act. This is how clarity turns intention into momentum. Clarity also eliminates internal conflict. When you are unsure, part of you wants to move forward while another part wants to stay safe. That inner tension drains energy and creates procrastination. A clear outcome resolves that conflict. The mind stops negotiating and starts aligning. Your energy becomes concentrated instead of scattered. But clarity is not just about knowing the destination. It is about knowing why it matters. When your outcome is linked to meaning, your brain assigns it higher priority. Meaning creates resilience. When challenges arise, a clear and meaningful outcome keeps you engaged instead of overwhelmed. You don't quit because the reason is bigger than the discomfort. Another powerful effect of clarity is that it conditions expectation. When you repeatedly focus on a specific outcome, your brain begins to expect it. Expectation shapes behavior. You prepare differently. You speak differently. You take action with more confidence. And confidence invites feedback from the world that reinforces your belief. Clarity also reduces fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty. When you know what you are aiming for and why, fear loses its grip. You may still feel discomfort, but it no longer controls you. Your actions become intentional rather than reactive. When you hold a clear outcome in your mind consistently, it becomes a reference point for every decision. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" You ask it, "Does this move me toward what I've decided?" That level of clarity transforms effort into alignment and turns possibility into progress. Key to your identity is the deepest level of control in your life. You will always act in alignment with how you see yourself, even when it contradicts your conscious goals. This is why people set ambitious targets and still sabotage themselves. The goal says one thing, but the identity says another, and identity always wins. Most people try to change results without changing who they believe they are. They say, "I want to be successful," but deep down they still identify as someone who struggles, someone who falls short, someone who plays small. That internal self-image quietly dictates behavior. The brain's primary job is to keep you consistent with your identity, not to make you happy. Consistency feels safe. Familiar feels safe. Every identity is built through repetition and emotional experience. You were not born believing you were confident or insecure, capable or incapable. You learned it through moments that carried meaning. Over time, those moments formed a story, and that story became who you are. The truth is, that story can be rewritten. When you change identity, behavior changes automatically. You don't have to force discipline when you see yourself as disciplined. You don't have to chase success when you see yourself as someone who produces results. Your standards rise naturally. You stop negotiating with yourself because certain behaviors no longer fit who you are. The fastest way to shift identity is to change the questions you ask yourself and the language you use daily. The words "I am" are incredibly powerful. When you consistently say, "I am committed," "I am someone who follows through," "I am becoming stronger every day," your brain looks for evidence to support those statements. What you declare repeatedly, you reinforce neurologically. Another way identity shifts is through new references. A single decisive action can begin to redefine who you are. When you do something you once believed you couldn't, your brain updates its self-image. Stack enough of these moments, and the identity solidifies. This is why small wins matter so much. They are proof, not just progress. Identity also determines what you tolerate. You will not tolerate behavior that violates how you see yourself. When your identity changes, your boundaries change. You walk away from situations that no longer align. You demand more from yourself and from life. This is why lasting transformation is never about chasing goals alone. It is about deciding who you are and who you are no longer willing to be. When your identity shifts, your actions follow, your habits align, and your results become a reflection of who you have chosen to become. Daily rituals are the invisible architecture of your life. Most people believe change comes from sudden breakthroughs or moments of motivation, but motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls based on mood, environment, and circumstances. Rituals, on the other hand, operate regardless of how you feel. They are automatic, and what becomes automatic becomes permanent. Your brain loves efficiency. It looks for patterns it can repeat with minimal energy. When you create a daily ritual, you remove the need for decision-making. There is no debate, no internal struggle. The action happens because it is scheduled, expected, and familiar. Over time, the brain associates that ritual with certainty and control. The reason rituals reprogram the mind faster than motivation is repetition. What you do daily sends a powerful message to your nervous system about what matters here. When you consistently move your body, focus your mind, and feed yourself empowering input, your brain adapts. Chemistry changes. Energy changes. Your emotional baseline shifts. Rituals also shape identity. Every repeated action is a vote for the type of person you believe you are. When you show up for your ritual, even on difficult days, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. That self-image becomes stronger than any temporary emotion. Discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like alignment. Morning and evening rituals are especially powerful because the brain is more suggestible at these times. What you focus on when you wake up sets the emotional tone for the day. What you focus on before sleep programs the subconscious mind. When you intentionally choose these moments, you take control of your internal state rather than reacting to the world. Rituals do not have to be complex. In fact, simplicity is what makes them sustainable. A few minutes of focused breathing, intentional movement, clear intention, or visualization practice daily can reshape emotional patterns. Consistency matters more than intensity. A small ritual done every day will outperform a powerful action done once. Over time, rituals compound. What feels insignificant in a single day becomes transformative over months and years. Confidence grows. Focus sharpens. Emotional resilience increases. You stop depending on external circumstances to feel good or perform well. When rituals are in place, success stops being something you chase on good days and abandon on bad ones. It becomes a natural expression of how you live. The mind adapts to what you repeatedly practice, and daily rituals are the practice that turns intention into identity and identity into results. Gratitude and certainty are powerful accelerators because they collapse the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Most people wait for results before they feel grateful or confident, but that approach keeps them stuck. The brain does not move toward what it doubts. It moves toward what it expects. When you practice gratitude and certainty in advance, you train your nervous system to believe that what you want is not only possible, but inevitable. Gratitude immediately shifts focus. Focus. Instead of scanning for what is missing, the brain begins to notice what is working. This changes emotional chemistry. Stress hormones decrease and resourceful states like calm, confidence, and creativity increase. In that state, your mind becomes flexible. You see options instead of obstacles. Gratitude is not passive, it is a decision to direct attention towards strength rather than lack. Certainty amplifies this effect. When you are certain, your body aligns with that belief. Your posture changes, your voice changes.